there, and welcome to another episode of Photoshop Friday. I'm your instructor, Jessica Sprague. I'm excited about today's episode for two reasons. One, this is the first time I've ever recorded Photoshop Friday on my brand new Mac. And the second reason is that we're going to be working on creating today something that I think you're really going to love. We're going to be making a storyboard, which in the photography world is essentially a collage of photographs that are set side by side so that they can tell a better and a deeper story using multiple photographs. There's a lot of kind of design elements and ideas at play here as well, and we're going to talk through those as we go through our tutorial. The first thing that we need to do is decide what size we want our ultimate image to be, and that's going to guide us as we create the mat or the background for our collage. I've already opened up the 3 photographs that I'm going to be using in my collage, and you can see that they're down here in the project bin here in Photoshop Elements. If you don't have Photoshop Elements, you can see that they're here represented by the tabs up at the top of the screen as well. So really, your ultimate size depends on whether you are planning to print this out or if you're just going to display it on the web. I'm going to assume that we want a print-sized file to begin with, because you can always save downward by throwing away a bunch of data to make it appropriate for showing online, but you can't size up. So if you're in any doubt as to whether you may hang this on your wall, go ahead and create it at that larger size. So typically a storyboard is going to be much wider than it is tall, but we need to take into consideration that we don't want to spend $1 million on having to custom frame something. So one of the sizes that I like a lot for a storyboard is a 12 by 18, and we're going to set that horizontal. It's still very possible to find a 12 by 18 frame, but it gives us a little bit of extra width in comparison to the height of our project. So let's go ahead and create our initial storyboard canvas at 12 inches by 18 inches. So come up to File and New and Blank File. And here in our new dialog box, let's go ahead and set our width here to 18 inches. Just type in 18 and then set your little drop down to inches, and then 12 here for our height, also in inches. And since we are creating this as a printable file, so we want this to print out to go on our wall, we want our resolution to be 300 pixels per inch. This is something just to kind of tuck away here. There are really 2 different target resolutions that we're going to be focusing on. Resolution is just basically the density of the data or the pixels that are in any image. So for printing, we want our pixels or our data to be squished up into 300 of those per inch, so they're very close together. Whereas if we are going to display our image only online, our resolution will be 72. So that's our other little target keyword there, 72. And in that case, all of those little pixels are going to be spread out a lot more so that they're more appropriate for viewing online. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our saving as well. So we've got 18 inches wide, 12 inches high, 300 pixels per inch in resolution, and then we want RGB color mode, and we want for our background contents to be white. That's going to be the background color of our canvas. So we'll click OK, and Photoshop creates a brand new document for us. Now, there are several ways to create a storyboard. I think this is the easiest way to be able to get the most flexibility, but it's going to take just a little bit to kind of get your head around what's going on here. So the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and create a couple of new layers. Here in the Layers palette, right over here, you can see that right at the top we have this little New Layer button. Depending on your version of Photoshop, this might actually be at the bottom of the Layers palette, but it looks like a square with a little kind of corner flapped up there. So when you click on that, you can see that we get a new layer here, and we are going to just call this one Photo 1. The reason why we're going to do that is rather than simply dragging our photograph on, You can see my photo bin is right here. Rather than simply just pulling one of my photos on, I actually want to take some care and decide which parts of my photo I want to have showing and which parts I would like to hide. I never use my crop tool. And that is something, it's not a dirty little secret, it's actually something that I say loud and proud. And the reason for that is that you can accomplish the exact same functionality as your crop tool without ever having to throw any data away. So all three of my images here, while I did edit them, adjusting white balance and some of the color and things like that, I didn't crop any of these. So these are all exactly as they came out of the camera size-wise. So I'm actually saving my cropping step for here in the storyboard. So what we're going to do here is create a rectangle. And the rectangle is going to be a placeholder for our photographs. And then I'll show you a clipping mask that you can then use your photograph on to be able to create the right size and shape for your particular image. So we're going to grab our rectangular marquee tool. It's right up here at the top of the toolbar. And it looks like a little marching ants in a square. Rectangular marquee tool is actually a selection tool, but it allows you to draw images as well, draw shapes. And as you might be able to guess, the rectangular marquee tool draws rectangles and squares, while the elliptical marquee tool draws circles and ovals. There are lots of other things you can do with these particular tools, but for now, we're just going to use this to draw a big rectangle. And we're not going to size it in any particular way because we have this canvas here. We're going to print the whole thing out as one image. And so we could basically go nuts here and do whatever we want. If you wanted to put 50 images in here, great. All you have to do is draw the right placeholders. We're going to start out kind of slow here. We're going to go with 3 images. So I'm just going to draw a rectangular selection here. I'm going to leave some at the bottom so we can add in some text. So my rectangle is going to be about this big. I want it to be roughly a third of the image size, the full canvas size here, plus a very generous border around the edges. And that's pretty much all the mental sizing I did. So then we can just look at our foreground color here, make sure it's not white, and then we'll just grab our paint bucket tool, which, surprisingly, looks like a paint bucket. And all we're going to do here is just click down to fill that selection with whatever our foreground color is, which is right over here. As long as it's not white, it's fine because you can't see white. So once we have that, you can see we still have our marching ants. So we need to get rid of that with our Control and D key or our Command and D, and that deselects. So let's switch back over to our Move tool now. Our Move tool will enable us to move different items around, but it also is kind of my default or go-to tool when I'm not really doing anything else. And that way I don't accidentally paint something or zoom in way far or any of that kind of stuff. So we've got our photo 1 layer here, and you can see that we've got our black rectangle sitting on that photo 1 layer. Now, to keep these roughly even, I want definitely to keep them the same height. I may change widths depending on the photographs themselves, but let's go ahead and duplicate this photo 1 layer a couple more times. So we're going to right click and choose duplicate layer from that little flyout menu, and we can call this one photo 2 and click OK. Now we have an exact copy, and all we need to do is just pull this one over to the right. There we go. Give a pretty generous size border in between here, and then we'll right click again, duplicate layer. We'll call this one photo 3. Click OK. And pull that one over. And now we can actually use our commands down here with our Move tool selected. These are our Align and Distribute commands. This is going to help a lot in evening out the amount of space that is in between each one of our photos. So all we have to do is kind of come off the edge of our document here and just click and drag, which selects all 3 of our images. There are lots of ways to select a bunch of layers at once, but when you've got nothing else on the page, just clicking and dragging over all of them is a really cool and quick and easy way to do that. So let's go ahead and just pull these over. I want to leave, again, some space at the bottom so we can write some text. So what we want to do is even up the amount of space, or distribute all three of our images evenly across so that they are spaced exactly the same. So we're going to use our distribute command here. We're going to choose distribute middle. So you can see that that just shifts that center image over, and now we've got even amounts of space on both sides. Now at this point we could make these just a little bit taller to kind of fill up that space a bit. And when you're done making adjustments, we need to go ahead and hit our enter key to commit that change. So I like what's going on here. This looks pretty good. So at this point we have essentially placeholders for three different images. And here is the reason why I never use my crop tool. So I'm going to click on my photo 1 black rectangle here, or my photo 1 layer. You can see they're the same thing here in my layers palette or on my document. And now let's switch over and decide which photo we want to have go in this spot. So I've got my choices here. There's Elliot coming after his snowflake, and there's him. Oh yes, that was yummy. And then there's a super close-up. So I think that I'd like for this one to be the middle, and I'm going to do the chasing snowflake one for my left-hand photograph. So all we need to do is, with our move tool selected, just click and drag to pull that image up onto the tab that represents our new document, and then pull it down and drop it off. Now you can see that not very much has happened here, except for my photo came in and it's way bigger than that rectangle. We're going to fix that here as we continue on with our storyboard. So what we're going to do is come over here to our layers palette, and here is the key thing of this whole tutorial right here. We're going to create what's called a clipping mask. A clipping mask is essentially the command that we use to have one layer conform itself to the size and shape of the layer underneath it. So we've got our placeholder rectangle here, and we want for our photograph to become the size and shape of our placeholder. So all we need to do is clip them together. So we can hover on the line in between our photograph and the photo 1 layer underneath it, and then we're going to hold down our Alt or Option key if you're on the Mac. You can see that our cursor turns into a little double circle icon. When you see that icon, go ahead and click down, and you can see the little indentation here that has happened, as well as our photograph has conformed itself to the size and shape of that layer underneath it. Very cool. So essentially I've done my cropping here, but I haven't cropped anything. So if I wanted to come back now and resize my image to get a little bit more detail in, I can do that. I can also rotate, I can also reposition to be able to get exactly what I want inside of this little window I've created. So the main lesson to take away from today is throw away your crop tool and don't ever use it again. Anytime you need to resize or reposition anything and you want it to fit into a specific size, create a placeholder clipping mask and you'll be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this just a little bit. And when you're happy with the way that your resize and reposition looks, go ahead and click your green check mark or hit enter to commit. And let's try that again. So our center placeholder here, remember you always want to click on your clipping mask and then come up. Let's see, I'm going to use this large one here. Again, move tool is selected, so we'll just click and drag to pull that up and then drop it down. And remember our clipping mask, hover on the line in between our photograph and the layer underneath it. Hold down Alt or Option, wait for your double circle icon, and then click down to create your clipping mask. Now, I want to leave one of my photographs, at least one of my photographs, in very close-up detail. The reason for this is that it lends an air of really dynamic storytelling to our entire storyboard. If everything were kind of spread out at a distance like this, then it feels far away and a little bit less immediate. And so we want to be able to vary the distance between ourselves and our subject here. And the best way to be able to do that is simply to zoom out on some and zoom in on others. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter to commit here. And of course, because I have not cut anything out, you can see the bounding area of my photos right here. I haven't cut anything out, so I can always have the flexibility to come back and resize or reposition or rotate and make it great without having to pre-decide, oh, okay, well, I want only this much of his blue cap showing, and then having to come in and realize that it wasn't exactly what I wanted. So we'll come up to our Photo 3 clipping mask. And here's the one I'll use. So we'll just click and drag to pull that one up, drop it off, and let's clip it in, and then we can make any adjustments we need. So here we are with our Photo 3 and our Photo 3 clipping mask. Hover on the line in between our photograph and the clipping mask underneath it. Alt or Option, wait for your double circle icon, and then click down to create your clipping mask. So I think I'll rotate this one just a little bit. The rotation was maybe a little too strong. I like a little bit of rotation though. And I like how large he is here, maybe just a little bit more. Now what I'm looking at here is, you can see there's a very strong diagonal angle right here in his face coming down towards the left in this center photograph, and I don't want that to conflict with the angle that I'm setting this very left photograph at. So I'm actually thinking that a straight up and down image might actually work a little bit better here because of that very strong angle in the center. I kind of like to offset these just as well. And don't worry at all about cutting off the tips of hats or the tips of heads. Really what matters is the focal area of your photograph. Let's go ahead and hit enter to commit here. And I think I might come back now and make just a little bit more of an adjustment to this first photograph. I want to make sure that he's got plenty of room to run in to the photo as he's chasing his snowflakes here. So I'm going to angle this off just a little bit so that we've got plenty of room for him to run into the canvas. Now you can see here that I have a photograph with the subject that's facing towards the right. This is something that you can kind of pay attention to as you're building different photo collages and in design in general. If you focus an object or a subject facing in towards the image, it helps to lead the eye in. So if I actually had this subject facing towards the left, I would either flip that image so that it faces towards the right, or I would put it on the right so that it faces in towards the left. Of course, you may decide to switch that for artistic reasons, but just know that in general, the eye is going to be led in towards wherever the subject is facing. So if you wanted to lead the eye right out of the page, you would put your right-facing image over on the right-hand side. So I think I'm going to zoom this one out just a tiny bit more. Just want to create a really good balance here. A really good mixture of angle and emotion and story. I think I might angle this just a little bit more. There we go. And then maybe pull my first image up. And this process of refining the position of all of the items in your project is really what takes the longest, as you can see, until it really makes your heart begin to sing. I think I might push this one over just a little bit as well. There we go. So here is the basic recipe for creating a storyboard. Now remember that what's really happening here is that what is setting the size and position of each one of these photos now are our clipping masks. So these are the items that you're going to need to move if you want to move your images around. So for example, say I wanted to move my two side images in towards the right hand side, in towards the center just a little bit. So I could click and drag over both of those. You can see how they're both targeted now. That's important. And then nudge them with my arrow keys to bring them in just a little bit more. And same thing with this on the right hand side. I need to make sure that I select them both. If I only select my photograph, my photo is just going to move inside of that window. And if I only select my clipping mask, it's only going to move the mask and not the photo with it, which means that I'm essentially adjusting the position of the photograph within that window as well. Since I've got it where I want it, I want to select them both to move them both at once. Now we've got our beautiful storyboard. We can add in some cool text. We can add in other embellishments if we want. And we're ready to go ahead and save this. We want to save this in two ways. The first way, of course, is going to be our PSD files. So far, we've been taking a risk here and not saving this at all. So we want to be able to save this, File and Save As. And we want to be able to save this as our PSD file. You can see that right here. This is going to ask me where I want to save it. I'm just going to put it in Documents for now. I have a digital scrapbooking folder. You can, of course, if you're not a digital scrapbooker, create some kind of a folder that is outside of your photographs. That's really important. That can be the kind of collection bucket for all of your works in progress. So we'll go ahead and put that. I'm just going to put it in Documents for now, and we'll click Save. Now our next piece is to save this as a printable file. So we can come up to File and Save As again. This time I want to save it as a JPEG. So you can see I can make different folder assignments here, and I'm going to save this. You can see Format right here. Drop that down and choose JPEG. Now we can, I'm just going to put a -print after this and click Save. It's going to ask if I want to throw any data away. I'm going to say no. So it says, what kind of quality do you want here? Always just choose maximum. So we'll click OK, and now that JPEG file is perfect for sending to your printer to be printed. Now we want to be able to save this to show our friends and family online, or send in an email, put it on our blog, make it our Facebook timeline, all kinds of stuff you can do here. Now, you may have heard rumors about having to flatten layers or having to resize this, but I've discovered a way that is super quick and easy to be able to resize any image, save it out for the web without any other tasks or procedures beforehand. So all we do is come to File and Save for Web, and it's going to throw you this very scary dialog box that says, hey man, this image is way too big for you to try to save for web, and your computer's going to die, and it's going to be a terrible thing. Are you sure you want to continue? You know what? Yes, we do. Thanks for the warning, though. And it may take a little bit to grind here because this is a large image. I'm going to go ahead and resize my window. This is a large image, and so it may take a few seconds, even up to 20 seconds, for it to fully kind of capture what's going on here. What we want to do is save this as a JPEG, and we want to save it as high quality. Let's go ahead, anything between probably 85 and 95 is going to be great quality here. And you can see that our original size was 5400 pixels, which is perfect for being able to print out. But 5400 pixels at 72 pixels per inch is just a gigantic file. So we want to throw away most of that data. I would say let's take this down to something like 750 wide. So if we save 750 here, we're basically reducing this to 13% of its original size, and we can just hit enter. Now it looks teeny, so let's go ahead and choose 100% from our little preview, and now you can see that this is exactly what our image will look like online. And all we need to do at this point is to click Save. Now you can post your image in any gallery, post it on your blog, have fun, and I can't wait to see what you make. This has been another episode of Photoshop Friday. I'm Jessica Sprague, and I'll see you soon.